Morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me, as always, is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey everybody, good morning to everyone. This is a special one, isn't it?
Yes, well, not in a good way. Um, Last night, the United States attacked Iran. I believe it was a drone strike, and we killed a top Iranian general who was unfortunately also very beloved by the people. So that has an interesting confluence of getting both the government and the people aligned against the United States, which is actually not a common thing. The people have liked us a great deal more than the government has, with some
Um,
exceptions.
the
Yes,
information I'm getting is that it may have actually been a drone strike in Baghdad, but that the a general was known to be there, and he was in the international airport where the drone strike happened.
that's an extraordinarily important correction. So thank you. So it may be that, as I've understood it, it was an attack on Iran.
That's what I
But yes,
understood.
if the
Yeah.
even if the general, this is why language, we've discussed this before. Language is, if it was an attack in Baghdad, but on the general, then it is an attack on Iran, even though Iran wasn't hit. Oh God.
Yes, according to Trump, commander, high profile commander, he's the commander of Iran's basically like secret service called the Quds Force. His name is General. Let's see, sorry, Commander Qasim Soleimani, I think. And according to Trump, Qasim was planning attacks on America, and the whatever that means,
Yep.
he hasn't said more than that, and that they were at an Baghdad's international airport, and it killed two Iraqi militia officials and Qasim.
All right. So, and this is going to have massive consequences. One of the other problems is, if that's the case, which it turns out, yes, that's what the AP is confirming. So,
Hmm.
if that's the case, that also does mean we actually did make an attack in Iraq. And that's important because if Iraq does not condemn it,
Hmm.
they're going to be seen to having actually helped, whether or not they did, whether or not they provided intelligence, however this happened. They either come out, there's no neutrality for them because the attack occurred on their soil. So they either come out for or against. Now,
Right.
there
So
is
that puts them
a
in an
huge,
extraordinarily, uncomfortable position.
and there's a huge amount to unpack there because the history between the two is rather long. It's pretty identical. It hasn't changed much in 3,000 years. It's a long history, but it is an important one, and I think we will cover it. So, once again, a U.S. drone strike appears to have killed an important uh, commander an important Iranian commander who was both really beloved by the people and well respected by the military. At this point, it is expected that Iran is going to call this a act of war. It is expected that China and Russia, both of whom are unofficial allies with Iran, are also going to respond, and they will not respond well. Um, this has been called by NPR the single most significant event in Iran, or significant a change in our relationship with Iran since the 70s and since the United States engineered coup in Iran, where we overthrew their government, which we will also cover because that is rather relevant. So, Ansgar, is there anything else that we have before we start to get into a deep dive that we should
Yeah,
cover with this?
sure. Let's get all of the current state of affairs
All right.
before we go into history and then speculation on the future. Um according to a statement released by the Defense Department, the strike was aimed at deterring future Iranian attack plans. So this was directed at the Iranians. This is an admission that this was directed at the Iranians. Um, the official White House statement reads as follows: At the direction of the president, the U.S. military has taken decisive defensive action to protect U.S. personnel abroad by killing Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds. force, a U.S. Designated foreign terrorist organization. General Soleimani was actively developing plans to attack American diplomats and service members in Iraq and throughout the region. General Soleimani and his Quds Force were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American and coalition service members and the wounding of thousands more. So this is again a direct admission. This was directly aimed at Soleimani. It was not aimed at the other, Iraqi, people that were killed. Um, and then the Iranian president, because of course now all world leaders communicate through tweets for some goddamn reason.
Jesus. Yeah.
Tweeted, the great nation of Iran will take revenge for this heinous crime. So, whether that is bluster and saber rattling, or that is a legitimate, threat of war, is unclear. But yeah, that's where we are currently.
All right. So let's do a very brief history, brief history if we can, on
Yeah, let's just
and
boil
clarify what.
down thousands of years of bloodshed and violence into a 15-minute
Uh,
show. We got this.
yeah. Good. Well, okay. So Iran, why is it important? A number of reasons, not the least of which is 10% of the U.S. Actually, not well, roughly 10% of oil reserves, 16% of gas reserves are in Iran. This makes them the second largest source for fossil fuels in the world. That's one reason why everybody cares about them so much. Now, uh, we're going to go back on the history about 3,000 years. It will be a brief summary of the history, but this is roughly the history. First of all, Iran is not an Arab country. That is a common mistake. If you really want to offend an Iranian, call them Arab. They are not Arab. Arabs are, in fact, for the most part, their mortal enemies. They do not speak Arabic in Iran. They speak Farsi. Now, the Iranians and the Iranians are actually Persians. That is what used to be the Persian Empire. So when you think about Persians, that's Iran. That's their history. The Persians and the Arabs have been at war in one way or another, whether it's cold or hot, for about 3,000 years. So there's a little tension there. Iran and Iraq have constantly been sort of at odds with each other. There have been multiple wars between them, and that history, that's part of the 3,000 history war between the Persians and the Arabs. So when you think of Iraq, when you think of other Arabian countries, that's Arab, they speak Arabic. When you think of Iran, that's Persians, they speak Farsi. So again, you want to really offend one, call them. This is why actually it was Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice called a Iranian Arabic, and that this was our
Yeah.
Secretary of State who had no idea of the difference. And I mean, that is essentially calling, and this is not hyperbole, that is very similar to calling a black man a member of the KKK. I mean, that's how offensive
It
it
would be
is to
like
them.
it would be I have quite a few friends from Southeast Asia. It'd be like calling someone from China Japanese, or calling from someone from Laos Chinese, or something like that. Yeah.
Which also have, I mean, the bloodshed between it, the bloodshed between China and Japan has been really rather serious, but it isn't 3,000 years old. This is one of the oldest conflicts in the world, which is
Mhm.
why too I'm really glad they got Jared Kushner on it. I'm sure everything's going to be fixed. Now, um,
How did you
so
get that off with a straight face?
oh yeah, Jesus. Loads of practice with the dry wit. That is a very, very brief understanding of who we're talking about. Now, the U.S. has meddled in Iran for a very long period of time, and we've had a very bad history. The reason we've done it is, again, because of the oil. Now, when the governments in Iran have been hostile to the U.S., we tried to get rid of them somehow. We did this, obviously, in Cuba as well. We tried to get Fidel Castro. Bay of Pigs. We've done this a lot. Uh, I want to make something crystal clear. The Iranians have genuine gripes with the US. We have really fucked with that country quite badly. That was a freer country, actually, until we started to intervene. We overthrew a reasonably moderate government, put in a government that was more pro-US. That government ended up getting overthrown by the people, and that is how Ayatollah Khomeini came into power. He came into power overthrowing the US government, and he cracked down on people brutally. The way he was able to do this was by a power vacuum created when our government failed to govern successfully. It wasn't our government. It was an overthrow of the previous Ayatollah, which the CIA backed. It was, I think, in the 50s, if I recall. Um, there was a revolution against that government, and our Ayatollah was overthrown, as well he should have been. He was illegally installed by us. The people hate us for that reason. Well, have hated us. Recently, they've started to like us a lot more. They like our products, and there's a lot of American culture they like, and they usually blame our government, not us. At any rate, um, they have wanted to acquire a nuclear weapon for quite some time, and they have worked very hard
Yeah,
to
there's
do it. The CIA,
been
yes,
a lot of stuff in the news about that, about, you know, yeah, Iranian nuclear, the deal, and it was a very bad deal, and Obama's deal. So yeah, that's been big news for a while.
yep. The CIA was able to successfully do significant damage to that program by working with the Israelis to create a virus which attacked the centrifuges and destroyed most of their centrifuges, knocking them back quite a deal. This was also considered an attack against them. It was an attack against them, but nobody condemned it because it was an attack against their nuclear program, which nobody wants them to complete. We did create this deal with them. This deal wasn't a great deal, but one of the things is they've been getting reasonably close to being able to create a nuclear weapon. They were still years away, but they were very close in terms of what it really, it was inevitable and they were heading towards it. This deal would have set them back. It would have had them destroy all their infrastructure, or most of the infrastructure, to create the nuclear weapons. This deal would prohibit them from working on it in 10 years. And in 10 years, if they did want to work on it, they would basically have to start from scratch again. They'd have the knowledge, but none of the infrastructure. It was actually a pretty good deal. This also would allow us to increase influence. The reason is that soft power, the extension, which comes from many things. Soft power also comes from the extension of your culture. That's one reason why
Mhm.
free trade with China is important. That's one reason why opening up Iran is important, is because once they like us, once they like our products, they have much of a less interest in getting into a war with us. Free trade stops wars. So that deal had a number of other side effects that were phenomenally beneficial, which unfortunately were too nuanced for this government to understand. We decided to kill the deal. Now, we are not empowered to kill the deal. We can't get out of the deal. The only way to get out of that deal was if Iran failed to comply. Well, there's a problem there because Iran has been complying. Nonetheless, Trump illegally, it's legal, but in violation of that treaty,
Right.
failed to certify that they had complied. They did comply. He lied, said they did not, and withdrew the United States from that deal. They have said that they will now continue to their nuclear program. They will restart it, and the tremendous work by a lot of countries to make serious progress on this has been completely undone. There are many powers in the Trump government, and we're going to discuss this, that have wanted a war with Iran and have been upset that we have not done it. Trump has been actually kind of moderate in that respect because there are people in his cabinet who did want full out war, and he has not, until this moment, done anything that might lead down that path. This is the first time he's done something overtly aggressive. We will discuss that. But I think that should give everyone a basic primer on the last 3,000 years and how and why our relations are the way they are. Ansgar, is there anything I missed or anything you think I need to hit before we get into this?
Two little bits of updates. One is already we are seeing a sharp spike in oil prices. Interestingly enough, that they're responding that quickly. And It appears as though uh he acted without the approval of Congress.
All right, we'll discuss that. Theo said free trade doesn't stop wars. Yes, it does. Sorry, you're wrong. And here's why. Now, you said that it has led to increased tension in the EU. Yes, I didn't say it stops tension. I said it stops war. The problem is, if one of the reasons China hasn't gone to war with the United States is because the amount of debt that we hold. It's the economic influence. If they go to war with us, they lose all that money. Now, that is part of free trade because they are buying our debt. That is a product. The ability for them to buy products, to invest in the United States, the ability for China to put money here, which they have put a tremendous amount of, is one of the things that has stopped China from acting overtly aggressive with us. It is their economic interests in this country. Has it stopped tensions? No. Has it increased tensions? Maybe, depending on how you choose to measure it. It has irrefutably stopped war. The biggest way to deter war, one of the biggest, is mutually assured destruction. I don't like that method for a number of reasons that hopefully are reasonably
Because
obvious.
it just
The
takes
second way is
one madman to fuck the whole thing, fuck up the works. Yeah,
because everybody's dead. Eventually, it will
yeah.
fail. Eventually, mutually assured destruction will fail. Um, but
The numbers game.
anyways, so that's it. Uh, NATO starts wars, maybe, maybe not. Again, I'm not talking NATO. I'm talking free trade. Anyways, so let's for those of us just joining us, the United States has killed a Iranian general. He was in Iraq at the time. We did a drone strike. There have been Iraqi collateral damage. There has been Iraqi collateral damage. He was in Iraq. We hit the area with a drone strike. He has been killed. He was a popular general with the people and very well respected with the government. So Iran is expected to declare this as an act of war. China and Russia will weigh in. They are unofficially allies of Iran for any number of reasons, and I think there's a great deal to God, I'll get to that later. There is a great deal to go into. So is there anything else before we start going into any of these?
No, I don't. I'm not seeing any other updates right now.
All right. So I guess the first thing is, why now? Why was this done now? Ansgar, any thoughts on that?
Real quick, just the oil price spike is 4%. That is a massive spike. But well, something that was interesting was there was a back during Obama's administration, Trump actually tweeted out, I think even tagged Obama in it. I'm not sure, but he basically said that you watch, you wait. Obama will start a war with Iran to boost his numbers. I could go search, find the exact wording of the tweet, but he said in several tweets, several ways that he accused. He said that Obama will start some kind of an aggressive action with a foreign country, and Iran was one of the ones that he named specifically to boost his poll numbers. And Trump has this impeachment looming over his head. His poll numbers are dropping. He's losing the Christian right, and now all of a sudden, there is this. He can take this action and say, "Look, I was protecting embassies. I was protecting people," and it's working. If you look on Twitter, there's people all over the place saying, God bless you, Trump, protecting our people from, foreign aggressors. And, I don't know whether this guy really was or wasn't planning, but it does seem awfully convenient that he needed to move now, and he needed to move decisively without, really consulting anyone else in the government. You don't see Congress being involved. You don't see none of the House, the Congress. Nobody even knew this was going to happen. It was just, oh, look, on Twitter, this is what we did. And it comes at a time that's rather opportunistic, and we've already seen that's kind of how his mind works anyways.
That makes a lot of sense. And just going, we do have coming up, we've actually already got it scheduled. It should be on the calendar. We are doing why is the Christian right turning their back on Trump? Should they not? And sort of the religious implications of fundamentalists supporting Trump. But and that should be scheduled. I will look that up on the calendar. I think that's an excellent point. I will point out one other thing that I think is really interesting, which is we discussed on this show during, I think it was when we were discussing impeachment in general. One of the things that we discussed was no, sorry, this was during our breaking news segment. Our last breaking news segment. One of the things that we discussed was that it has been revealed, the so-called bombshell Democratic document that showed that a number of Trump's advisors said that he should release the money to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he has been impeached on, was his failure to do that and using that ostensibly as a means to attack a political opponent and to withhold that money until they attacked an opponent for him. Now, one of the interesting things about that was in that release, Bolton was quoted as saying releasing the money was in the best interest of the United States. Here's why that quote was, and we'd said it then, and I'd like to reiterate why that quote is so unbelievably important. It's because that is the wording of the Constitution in regards to the part of the impeachable offense that Trump is said to have violated. That is the precise wording of it. He must act in the best interest of the United States. And he is being impeached for failing to do so. Now, when Bolton said releasing that money is in the best interest of the United States, he framed that, whether deliberately or not, and I suspect it was deliberately, but
Mm-hmm.
whether deliberately or not, he framed that in terms that is explicitly impeachable. That is explicitly what we're talking about here. And what that means is Bolton admitted in one way or another that Trump was violating the Constitution. Now, why would he do that? Bolton has wanted us to invade Iran for a very long time. He wanted the invasion of Iran since he was in uh, the UN under Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Bolton has wanted it that long. He thinks that nothing is going to happen in Iran that's good until we invade it, and that's the way you stop this 3,000-year history: is you obliterate the country and obliterate essentially the
Well, I
people.
mean, if everyone's
Um,
dead, there's nobody left to fight a war, right?
yeah. So he's had that on his agenda for a very long time. He's written about that. He's been very open about that. He believes that is the solution to all of it: invade, wipe out the country. Now, when he joined on Trump's administration, there was a very profound concern that he would lean in that way, and he certainly was instrumental in us destroying our treaty with Iran that was ostensibly going to keep them in check and was good for everybody. They loved it. We loved it. It was a good treaty, actually. There were faults in it, but those faults, by the way, one of the faults was it was going to end in what, 10 years? Yeah, but guess what you can do here? Ansgar, what do you think you can
Renegotiate
do
in
in
10
10 years?
years. Yeah.
Ah!
I know. I know.
Don't say that. Yeah. So, and in 10
Something
years,
that
by the way, they have,
somebody that is involved in business should understand. I mean, you renegotiate contracts
yeah.
all the time. That's just how it works. Um,
And in 10 years, they have more incentive the the deal. So, well, let me finish with
yeah,
Bolton.
please.
So, Bolton wants to wipe Iran off the face of the planet. He has said this. I mean, he's been on CNN, he's been on Fox News, and he said nothing's done until we do that. So Bolton now, then in our previous show, we were on with ProLib, and somebody had said, um, yeah, that's a good question. We'll get to that. Bolton had said that, no, we were on ProLib, and somebody with ProLib was on our show, and somebody had said, how long before Bolton flips on Trump? I think he's probably already done it. Trump booted him out. He and Trump have had tremendous tensions over Iran, but over a number of other things as well. And Trump got rid of him. And I don't think it's an accident that this private communication in which Bolton explicitly lays out the groundwork that could end in Trump's successful impeachment, that was released to the New York Times. How? And how was the wording released to the New York Times? I suspect it was probably Bolton. At any rate, Bolton is not a friend of Trump. Bolton can probably end Trump because of that conversation and because of any other amounts of testimony. And
Right.
all of a sudden, we do the number one thing Bolton would most want to see Trump do. Absolutely. If you were to say, what do you want most? Bolton would say, I want to see an attack. And that was the fundamental difference between the two that caused every other schism. Bolton is in the biggest, best position to end the Trump administration right now. And we just did the number one thing Bolton has most wanted. I find that curious.
Here's some. Let me read these tweets. So the first one comes in on October 2012, October 22nd, 2012. And Trump says, "Don't let Obama play the Iran card in order to start a war in order to get reelected. Be careful, Republicans." Then he says in November 11th, in order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran. Then on October 12th, now that Obama's poll numbers are in tailspin, watch for him to launch a strike in Libya or Iran. He is desperate. Then September 13th, I predict that President Obama will at some point pick Iran in order to attack Iran in order to save face. September 13th. Remember what I previously said. Obama will someday attack Iran in order to show how tough he is.
Well, this would certainly be in keeping with his very long history of complaining about what other presidents may or may not do and then doing the exact same thing himself.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the impeachment angle, I think you bring up a very good point, and I think that the impeachment has to have played a part in this. Now, I will say that um, Richard Clarke, who was highly respected as our anti-terrorism czar for a good period of time, and isn't always really well understood, especially on the right, I find, which is interesting since he was installed by conservative presidents. But when Bill Clinton first came into office, Clarke told him, your biggest single concern is going to be anti-terrorism. And Clinton laughed his ass off. Clinton was like, yeah, whatever. Then the first World Trade Center bombing happened, and Clinton said, this is never going to happen again on American soil. What do we need to do to make sure of it? And Clinton gave Clarke just about everything he needed to do that. Now, the same thing happened with Bush. Bush came into office. Clarke said, anti-terrorism is going to be your single biggest thing. And Bush laughed his ass off at him. But by that point, there was enough evidence that really Bush sort of listened. If he had 9/11, probably would not have happened. You get into a whole other history there. But the reason I bring this up is because Clarke, in Clarke's book about 9/11 and how that happened and about national security and what previous presidents had done either for or against to help. He mentions a meeting where they were talking about a U.S. attack on, and I forget what it was. I think it was an attempt to kill. No, it wasn't an attempt to kill bin Laden, but I think it was an attack in Afghanistan, and it was during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And most of Clinton's advisors told Clinton, you actually can't do this attack right now. And the reason is because if you do, you will be accused of doing it explicitly to take attention off of Monica Lewinsky. So even though you should do this, you can't do it because you've lost too much political power and it will be used against you. And people will say you're doing it just for Monica Lewinsky and you will lose polling and your opponents will work against you. He asked Clarke what Clarke said, and Clarke said, that is correct. That's what's going to happen to you. We should do it. And then Clarke, he had said it. He regretted giving this advice, but he gave the advice because of Lewinsky. You really probably shouldn't, sir. It's not as good for you. It is in the best interest of the country that you do something else, but you're gonna take too much of a hit with it. Don't do it. And Clinton said to Clarke, don't ever tell me what to do again based on what's best for me politically. What's best for the country? Clarke said, we make this attack. Clinton said, done. Don't you worry about Lewinsky. That's my problem. So, and this is Clarke's own book, and he was a conservative. So I do get a little hesitant to throw, especially the other party, the ones that I don't like, under the bus and say, well, just because it's politically expedient, that makes it, that's the main reason or that influenced it. But in this case, yes, that's not what I firmly believe. I think, and I understand the argument that people are going to say, well, he would have done it anyway. Certainly, I believe that that's what Clinton did. But
Mm.
I will tell you, this guy, if he was the head of their intelligence organization, yes, he was plotting against U.S. interests. People are plotting against U.S. interests all the time. The question is how much of, and there's so much that he's, when they cut up the, I think that was Iran. Yes, was that Iran? Yeah, that cut up
Oh, the reporter?
the reporter, butchered him live.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he didn't care, and that had profound. Um,
I don't think
that
he
had
was butchered live. I think he was.
uh,
They found him butchered, and it was very clear who had done it.
No, he was alive when they did it. So he was alive when they started
Oh, I
dismembering him.
mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but he wasn't. It wasn't like live, like broadcast live
Yes, no, no.
butchering. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, they it was in a embassy actually. He was
Mm-hmm.
in an embassy. They attacked him, and before they had even killed him, they started, severing his limbs and all this. It was
Yeah.
a pretty gruesome thing. So, but yeah, that's clarification there.
Did Quesa had a super
Yes.
chat question? Would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, please. So the super chat was Quessa 5,000. We got to get something that translates that into U.S. currency. You know what? He super chats enough. I will figure out how to do the calculation. So because we really
Roughly
appreciate.
$5.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Was Bolton involved in the 79 hostage crisis in Iran? Seems almost personal. It does seem personal. Bolton's an idiot. And I mean, he is a spectacular idiot. And he has proven that time and time again. Those of you who know me know I rarely engage in personal attacks, even of public figures. I stand by that one. That's not a very hard one to um, that's a pretty safe one. And he's an idiot and he's a bully, and he really enjoys, I think, bullying other countries. He enjoys the notion that the U.S. is the biggest, best country in the world. We can't make any mistakes, and if anybody messes with us and we don't like them, and if they're a thorn in our side, you obliterate them, and that's that. If he has a personal interest in Iran, other than that, I do not know what it is.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Do you know if he was involved in the hostage crisis?
I know nothing of that. I was going to look into that, but that I can tell, and I think Intrigued Feline looked into it and was unable to find anything. That I can tell, no, there is no relation. I don't know about idiot, but he is really hawkish. But I mean, he's given reasons why the UN. He said the UN would operate just as effectively if you removed everything above the second floor at the UN, and he meant it. And I think you have to be pretty stupid not to understand the value of the UN. Is the UN largely toothless? Yes. Does the UN have significant problems? Yes. Could it be better? Absolutely. But it's important. And he's said a lot of genuinely just really uninformed things. So at any rate, yeah, I think, let's see, we're talking about, so yeah.
Yeah. So what does this mean for, I mean, this puts a lot of countries in some very peculiar positions. What does this mean, do you think, for the relationship between Iran and the United States, especially when we're talking about, that tweet that we saw? Like, do you think that's saber rattling? How likely do you
Ooh,
think
that's a good
war
question.
is? Skirmishes? I mean, what do you think?
Those are all some excellent questions. And but let's Mothra J Disco, the U.S. trying to destroy Iran is just a normal day. To be honest, no, I disagree for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mean, yes, us trying to influence Iran and yeah, I mean, us trying to overthrow the government, us trying to do, yeah, I suppose that's true. This is a genuine attack. This is one of the first times in actually, I'm curious to know when was the last time in history we'd like to get Dr.
Didn't
Misha
you have
Griffith on.
didn't you have an interesting quote about that?
I don't
About
recall.
okay. I thought you had an interesting quote about just how significant this
Oh yes,
changes our relationship.
Yeah, the quote was from NPR. NPR said that this is the most significant change in our relationship since the 1970s coup. So that would be almost 50 years. Now, but what's most interesting about this is the first time that I'm sure we've engaged in genuine hostilities where we have attacked them. And obviously, this is why I mentioned it earlier, the attack on their nuclear infrastructure was in fact an attack on the country. It's just everybody kind of looked the other way because it was an attack on their nuclear infrastructure. This is the first time that I'm aware of that we have done really what is an act of war in a very overt and irrefutable way. We can't say this wasn't us. We said that with the with the stuxnet virus, whatever it was that destroyed the centrifuges. We can't do that here. There is no deniability. We've admitted it. It's obvious that it was us and it was a targeted attack. So I don't know when was the last time we did that with Iran, but this is extraordinarily different than anything that's happened before. What is saber rattling and what's going to happen? What does this do with other countries? The first interesting one, it may or may not be the biggest, but I think this is to watch to see where things go. Is what is Iraq going to do? Iraq does not like Iran. They would like to have Iran wiped off the face of the planet. We've discussed that. That goes back 3,000 years. However, they don't necessarily want to do it themselves, and they don't necessarily want to be in a war, and there's a lot going on there. So they can do three things. They can ignore it. They really can't do that, actually.
I
I
was
mean,
gonna
that's
say, are you
technically an option.
sure that's an
Well,
option?
that's a technical option. So when I say three things, I mean three things that are technically possible. Ignore it, they really can't do because there's going to be consequences to ignoring it. They're going to be if they ignore it, it will be seen as condoning it. So they can condemn, condone, or ignore. If they ignore, that's the same thing as condoning. If they condone, they could, if Iran wanted to, they could just try a proxy war with us through Iraq. Iraq is close enough to us that if they attack Iraq, they can also force us to get involved. That's an interesting leverage point if they want to do it. It wouldn't be the first time. I mean, during the Iraq War, if you recall, during the first Iraq War, Iraq didn't attack us, and they didn't actually fight back. They
Right.
started attacking Israel. They started attacking Israel, and warheads started landing on Israel, despite the fact Israel was not in the coalition and had not attacked them. The reason they were attacking Israel was because if Israel retaliates, the entire Arab community would come to the defense of Iraq. So we had to tell we had to tell Israel, we know Iraq is killing your civilians. We know they're bombing you. You cannot defend yourselves. You can do Patriot missiles, do that defense. You can't retaliate. You can't engage. You have
Right.
to just literally take it to turn the other cheek, because if you engage, we had a whole bunch of Arabs in the coalition. We needed Arabs in the coalition. We couldn't do it without the Arab air bases. But if Israel joined, we lost all of that. We would lose 80% of our power if Israel retaliated. So the prime minister at the time took huge heat for his own people dying and him doing nothing. But that was the only way the coalition could operate and try to restore Kuwait. So it's one of the most talk about what is it? Not self-discipline, but just about the ability to just sit there and take the punishment, because
Yeah.
that's why Iraq attacked them to get to us, and it failed, but it came close to working. So my question is Iran going to try something similar? If they attack Iraq, that I don't know what that would do. We need someone who knows much more than I do to start to think about that, or to answer that question. But that's something I'm interested in knowing. Is that an option for them? Iraq, if it is, Iraq has to know it. If Iraq condemns it, that's the safest course of action. But then they maybe piss us off, which they don't want to do, and they're not inclined to condemn it because anytime somebody's killing a
Yeah.
Persian, which is how they view it, you're killing Persians. Go right ahead. So I don't know how they're going to handle it. They can't ignore it. Ignoring it is going to be condoning it. So they either condone or condemn, and there's serious problems with each. If they condone, they probably are risking war, I would assume, because this attack happened on their soil. The Arabs are always looking for a good excuse. Sorry, the
Right.
Persians are always, the Iranians are always looking for a good excuse, and this is a great one, because what they're going to say is, "Oh, you helped them. You gave them the coordinates of our general. You gave them everything they needed to do it, and it's all on you." So they are in a very difficult position. Russia and China aren't going to completely condemn this, I think, because they want to be a little cautious and they don't know what Trump's going to do and they know he's on he's a little unhinged, so they're going to be cautious going forward, but they can't allow this to go without some kind of condemnation. It may not be a full, the US is,
Right.
but they have to come out against it.
What
Somebody
does war with Iran even look like if that were to happen?
That I don't know too much about. Neither country is fully prepared for war. Iraq is still recovering from the last one. They don't have an infrastructure. They don't have enough military to keep themselves in check really particularly well. And Iran isn't all that much better, as I understand it. I could be wrong. The so where saber rattling comes in, and the question about this, because we had this discussion. I remember quite well. I was teaching high school when um, when Pakistan and India started arguing over the Kashmir region. The Kashmir region is a region both countries say they own. Both those countries hate each other pretty much about as much as Iranians and Iraqis. So they were arguing over Kashmir, and a dispute happened, and they started really going after each other. And then, if I'm correct, it was India who released authority to deploy nuclear weapons to the field. So they released the authority to the field to deploy nuclear weapons. What that means is they gave their generals the authority to deploy a nuclear weapon if their generals so chose. That is so unbelievably dangerous because, like you said before, it takes one
Right.
one guy. But there was a question: did they really do it? They did really do it, but was it with a wink and a nod to their generals saying, "No, you don't really have this authority. We're just saying it because we want to do saber rattling." But the problem is that's how wars start. Now everybody was terrified, and I was teaching high school, and the students were terrified, and they're like, "Is this World War III?" Well, here's the problem: we're allied with India. Russia was allied with Pakistan. This is exactly how world wars start.
Right.
But the one thing I told them was, as nervous as even I was, and we were all, 'cause, I mean, that was a hell of a thing to release control of nuclear weapons to the field. Um, Nobody wanted a war. Nobody wanted it. So there was some understanding on all sides that this is saber rattling, but the reality is nobody wants this. So they're going to try to work, but that was how we came so close during the 13 days of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Was nobody wanted war, but everybody was doing enough saber rattling that they were forcing themselves into positions to do it. So I think a lot of this is saber rattling. But it's always very hard to tell. If it wasn't hard to tell, saber rattling wouldn't be effective.
Right.
So I don't know, but it's dangerous and it is concerning. This is a profound shift in U.S.-Iraqi relations, and it is destabilizing worldwide. How much, nobody knows yet, but it is.
It almost feels like, considering he promised vengeance, it almost feels like he's put himself in a
Yeah.
position where he has to do something. Um, what that something is, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's war, but it does sound like he's put himself in a position where he almost has to spill some kind of blood, really.
Well, and I mean, again, and that's where saber rattling can get you into trouble. It may be saber rattling in the sense that, look, a lot of times when people want to do something, they do it. This is, the people who phone in bomb threats, phone in death threats. A lot of times the reason they do that is because they can't actually make a bomb and they can't actually threaten somebody or sorry, actually kill somebody. So they make the threats. So that's what you find a lot of. The people who do things like that do it because they don't have an alternative. It's a cheap and easy way to scare a public figure, is to send them a threat. But a lot of death threats are just that. They're threats because nobody can actually, or that person can't act on them. The people who can act on them usually do. They don't bother with the threatening. Now he's sitting there saying, "I'm going to rain fire on," which is not what he said, but and Trump does
Right.
that all the time, by the way, and he has no consequences for it. He said, "We're going to rain fire on North Korea and all this other stuff." But yes, at some point, if you make those threats enough and you don't act on them, you lose a lot of power, and everybody knows that, so they have to take those seriously. So what I hope is going to happen, and what often happens in these cases, is He's done this. Everybody acknowledges he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to respond. So what they do is they give him an easy out. They
Mhm.
say, okay, look, you can take out an installation we have here or there, or you can do something that really humiliates us a bit, and we can sit there and say, oh, wow, you got us really good. And now you can tell your people that you've got the Americans back. We look like, we got egg on our face, but didn't really do anything to us. And that's how we get out. But that's what this is engineered to do, allow him to either attack or force us in a position where we're like, okay, let's de-escalate this by giving you something you want.
Oh wow. Apparently he's gone further. He has vowed harsh retaliation against the United States.
Okay, so you see, I mean, listen, somebody had said when we start this stream, don't say we're on the edge of World War III,
No,
and
no, I don't think we
yeah,
are.
and so we wouldn't, and you pointed out, of course, we're not going to say that. We aren't gonna. I hope we have a reputation for not
Yeah.
gaslighting, and that's not the kind of show we run here, and that's not what we're gonna do. But this is concerning, and this it has a significant global impact, and it is like even going back to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, which was much smaller than this. It does put a lot of people on opposite sides of each other. Now, these are countries that right now have no interest in war. Iran and Iraq do have an interest in war, even if they're not capable of uh, uh, actually running one right now. They do want war with each other. They just
Yeah.
probably can't prosecute one. We could do a war with Russia or China. We really don't want one. Russia and China doesn't want that. So they are going to be very measured in their response. But to say that this isn't profound or isn't significant
Yeah.
is not a defensible position. This is
Here
this is quite serious.
now again, I do stress that just because these quotes sound aggressive doesn't mean that it's war. I'm going to read some quotes and they're very aggressive. But they
Or,
could, I mean, who knows what vengeance means? You know what I mean? Also, whether or not they actually intend to carry it out. But Rai Rez said for $10, thank you very much. This show just saved me hours of trying to figure out the situation. Thanks, Nick and Ansgar. That's exactly what we're trying to do here with our breaking news. Is trying to get all the news from all the sources and put it into one place. Um.
well,
So
and to give the context, which I hope
right.
we've also successfully done.
Yeah. So, again, Iranian president says, without a doubt, the great Iranian nation and other free nations in the region will take revenge on criminal America for this ghastly crime. And then, I call on forces to unify their ranks to expel foreign forces, said Mr. Amir on a one-time protege of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And then this is a mid-ranking commander said the U.S. Should either remove all its bases from the region or buy coffins for its troops. It's up to them. We do not like bloodshed.
Okay. Well, so a couple things. Ryrez, thank you very much for that, and we appreciate both the financial support, which really does help, and we appreciate we appreciate the sentiment. So thank you. Um, all right. So there's a lot to unpack there too. This is a phenomenally complex issue, which is
Yes.
which is why we wanted to cover it this way. This isn't easy. There is another problem. So we've talked about the difference between Persians and Arabs. The We covered the whole 3,000 year history of that in just 2 minutes. We are that good. Um, and Ilya Moon, thank you also.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you
you
guys.
very much.
It means a lot to us. So agreed. I learned what I needed to know here. Love you both and your show. Thank you for covering this. So we have numerous strategic bases in Arabian countries. Now, this gets profoundly difficult. Here, I'm going to give an example. This is probably one of the best examples. It's not the only one, which is Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a brutal dictatorship. They are probably worse than Saddam Hussein was. In fact, certainly worse than they are much more to the right of Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was reasonably moderate. Women could work under Saddam Hussein's regime. What Osama bin Laden after he destroyed the United States, his next goal was to destroy Saddam Hussein. He hated Saddam Hussein because Saddam Hussein was not a strict conservative and he did not follow Sharia law. Women were allowed to work, women were allowed to get an education, women were allowed to drive. I mean, whoo, pig stuff. And so Saddam Hussein was one of the most moderate governments out there. Yes, he was a brutal dictator, one of the most moderate governments out there. Now, the uh, let's see. Okay, so sorry. So, okay, one of the things is OPEC controls most of the oil in the country in one way or another because they can increase or decrease production to influence prices and to try to negotiate other people out of the market. OPEC is made up of, if I recall, 6 different countries. Saudi Arabia and Iraq have been 2 of those countries. Saudi Arabia is interesting because one of the reasons we had the economic boom of the 90s, which was a staggering economic boom. One of the reasons we had that economic boom was because we got oil very cheaply. In fact, we got oil much cheaper than most other countries, most European countries. How did we get that oil? Because OPEC would lower prices for us, and price increases were often vetoed. Who were they vetoed by? They were vetoed by Saudi Arabia. Why would Saudi Arabia do this, especially since they talked about hating us so much? Well, they do hate us, and they talk about it a lot. And but some of that was an act too, because we sold them a phenomenal number of guns. Our biggest export in this country is weapons. We provide weapons to both sides of just about. The United States is the largest arms manufacturer and exporter in the world. We sell a lot of it to Saudi Arabia. They use that to brutally oppress their own people. It is a ruthless dictatorship, far worse than Iraq ever. Well, ever it goes back a ways, but the far back than modern history of Iraq. You know, oh, we got to destroy Saddam Hussein because he's a huge brutal dictator. Nothing like Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia had a lot more oil, and they were willing to use their OPEC veto power to keep the price of oil low for us. Dick Cheney was the Secretary of Defense when, under the first George W. Bush, they negotiated a arms deal to Saudi Arabia, which brutalized their people, just brutalized their people, and cemented OPEC veto. They don't veto everything; they try to keep it, so it looks good, but they vetoed most, and we had some of the cheapest oil prices in the world, and that's how we got the economic boom of the 90s, and that's why all but one of the 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. But
Wow.
that was redacted. If you look at the country that they're from, it's always redacted. Everybody knows it's Saudi Arabia. They were from Saudi Arabia. But we didn't want to throw Saudi Arabia under the bus because we still wanted their veto power. So, of course, we attacked Saudi Iraq. Um,
Well, of course, because,
Yeah, because yeah. So, and if you want to understand how much those people hate us, their government loves us. The people know where the guns come from. They know where the support comes from, and the Royal House of Saud would be gone without our help. That's why the Royal House of Saud loves us so much. That's also how we have a military base in Qatar. In fact, CENTCOM is in Qatar. Central Command for the Middle East is in Qatar. Those bases violate all of the religious edicts that all of those governments have. So when they say you can't have women driving, you can't have them getting an education, guess what's happening on those bases?
right.
So those bases are a religious front to the people, and they remind the people that we own some of those governments. They aren't pleased with that, and they were willing to die for that. That's how much they hate us in Saudi Arabia. And to some extent, I'm sorry to say, we kind of earned it. I'm not saying 9/11 was justified, but their hatred is, and I get it. And you have to realize that's how much they hate us, and there are reasons for that. Those military bases all across the Middle East, I forget how many there are, but there's a lot, remind basically every Middle Eastern that the US is, in their view, and possibly justifiably so, an empire that's taken control of their governments, including, as we mentioned earlier, the CIA takeover. Yeah, well, it was a takeover, it was successful, actually.
I
Overthrow
just
of the
want to
government.
remind the audience how frustrated people get when American movies and games are censored for Chinese audiences. Now you're talking, I mean, that's just how frustrated we get, right? We're ready to boycott companies over crap like that. So imagine if our very governments were we felt as though our governments were an operating arm of a foreign adversary. You know what I mean? Like if that's really how we felt.
Yeah, would be pissed.
Yeah.
Um, so I lost my train of thought. It's too early in the morning for me to
Oh,
recover
very.
my train of thought.
But you
Um,
were talking about the military bases and how the people see that, why that upsets them and yeah, why
ah,
they hate us.
I mean, you have an excellent point. Yeah, we get upset about Blizzard and the comics and stuff like that, and over there, we're choosing their governments for them in some countries, and I mean,
Mhm.
it's and Saudi Arabia, the royal house of Saud murders children. It goes after people. It kills a lot of people, and they get their weapons from us. We know that that's what they do with our weapons, and we sell them the weapons anyway. And we do make some money off of it, but we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the OPEC veto power. We also know that the royal house of Saud is going to fall. When it falls, we are going to need another country that's got OPEC veto power. Oh, geez, where are we going to get another country from? Oh, look, there's a country named Iraq that has veto power on OPEC. I wonder what would happen if we go in and, oh boy. So, um, there is a very long, complicated history here. There's a reason they hate us, and we've done a lot of really terrible things to their people, to their governments, and so on and so forth. Um, there are a lot of them who would like to see war with us. Their governments don't necessarily want to for a number of reasons. They don't like us, but there you go. The bases are an affront to most of them. And here's another thing. There was a very famous study that was done a short while ago by Pew Research on religion. And most Americans think of Islam actually as there are people who are terrified of Islam in this country. That is true. But most of them recognize that Islam is a reasonably moderate religion. If you're an American, it does seem like a reasonably moderate religion because Muslims in the US tend to be reasonably moderate. But across the world, it isn't. And in fact, across the world, in the countries that are run predominantly Muslim, it is a really brutal religion in most cases.
Mhm.
Women aren't allowed to get an education; they're not allowed to drive. Men can't shave their beards. It gets really quite terrible. And U.S. military bases are in those countries and violate all of those religious laws, and they are pissed. So we meddle with the countries we meddle. There's a lot of reasons. We are not well liked in the Arab world,
Yeah.
and I understand a lot of it, unfortunately.
I have a question that's actually come up in the chat as well. If I could find it really quick, because I lost my train of thought. Um,
It's a little early, I think.
it is. It's very early. Here it's 5:25 in the morning. Um, but where was it? One person asked, "How do you think this is? To distract from the." Oh, I remember what this was a very important one. Um, do you think that these kinds of actions will solidify or regain traction that lost ground with the religious right for Trump? Um,
Ooh,
I'm already seeing people in the chat, or at least one person say that their family very religious. They're really happy about this because end times and all that
mm.
kind of stuff.
Well, let me actually, and Neil 604 just joined us, and we're very happy to see him. He said, "What are you doing up?" We'd like to know the answer to that ourselves, and we will let you know once we're down off of whatever it is we're smoking. Um, to reiterate, because we've had a lot of people coming in and out, the United States has assassination, may be a strong word, may not. We have
Well, I mean,
killed.
they specifically went after one guy to kill him. I'd call that an assassination.
It's a targeted. Well, it depends on a number of things, which I'd like to get into actually, because we killed Yamamoto. But
Mhm.
um, we have killed Iranian general. We dropped. He was targeted. We dropped a bomb on his head from a drone. He was on Iraqi soil at the time. I believe he was
Baghdad
on or near the
International
airport.
Airport. Yes.
Okay, so he was at the airport, and there was some collateral damage to Iraq. Very little, but there was Iraqi collateral damage. The general was well liked by the people of Iran and well respected and very high up in the Iranian military. The Iranians have vowed revenge and are saying that this is an act of war. So we have killed a Iraqi general. So this is obviously very important breaking news. NPR has said that this is the most significant change in our relationship with Iran since the revolution in
Yes.
1970, somewhere in the 70s. China and Russia has not yet weighed in, but they will since they are allies of Iran, and Iran is extraordinarily upset. This is, in fact, usually considered an act of war. It's either an assassination or an act of war. If it's an act of war, it's not assassination because it's usually not
Yeah.
assassination during wartime, but it's, I don't know, we want to go that far. So either way, this is going to be a problem.
So for all of you just waking up and joining us, Happy New Year.
So
Oh,
there are, according to the Bible, Jesus isn't going to come. Now, people frame it at times as he can't come. That's not one way to put it. He can't come until there's war in the Middle East. He will come after a war in the Middle East is a sign of the end times, so on and so forth. And it's a pretty serious war. It can't just be one of these skirmishes we've had. So there are people who think basically in terms of he can't come until there's one, and so they are actively trying to start wars in the Middle East. Now, this isn't just well, Israel Jews don't necessarily think of it in those terms because they don't believe in Jesus, but Christian Zionists, Christian Zionism is the belief that Jesus can't come until there's war in the Middle East, so we should start a war in the Middle East. Christian Zionists are often for example, the building of settlements in the disputed territories in Israel and the West Bank, near or past Palestine, depending on how you choose to look at it, because they know that that's going to start a war. Once a war starts, yay, Jesus returns and we all get to go to heaven. It's one of the reasons I really hate evangelicalism, because Christian Zionism is very close to it, and it's the idea that we should look forward to war and we should look forward to death and everybody dying because that's how Jesus comes back. It is a profoundly influential force unfortunately, it's been profoundly influential in our government. George W. Bush was a Christian Zionist. He had said that for his invasion of Iraq, one of the things he said is Grog and Magog, two demons, I believe they are referenced in, I forget where in the Bible, but Grog and Magog are running in the Middle East and we're going to go get them. He said this to the French president, who had to go look it up. He's like, "What the fuck is Grog and Magog?" And they had to go research. Like, "Oh, it's a biblical thing." He's like, "Really?" So, and he even said that God told him to invade the Middle East, and he thought he was in the end times. This is why also when Michelle Bachmann said that uh, Barack Obama was proof of the end times. Every generation for the last 2,000 years have thought they've been in the end times. They've acted that way, and it's caused a great deal of fucking problems. But I think you're right. I think Zionism, Christian Zionism, I should say, which is a different
they're
thing than
gonna
Zionism. Let me
really
not
see
make that
this as a
mistake.
good thing.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, um,
Um,
yeah.
just real quick, ZZ. It's all cool if you want to talk about, the current situation, but no proselytizing, please. Where that's not what this channel exists for. That's
There
great.
are plenty of channels for that, and we wish you luck on them. Go enjoy, and I'd be happy to discuss all that with you on those other channels.
Right, right, and you're allowed to have a Christian worldview and bring that worldview to the current events, but the proselytizing, not so much. Um, so okay, so do you think that how much of a bump do you think that could? Because I know right now, he's starting to lose the Christian right. Do you think that this will bring enough of them back?
That's a good question. When is our show with Sagart scheduled?
Sygart is scheduled. Give me one moment and I will actually bring that up. Sygart is scheduled. We've got him. That is Wednesday the 8th. That is at our normal 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
So we're going to have Dr. Sygart on. A number of you probably know him. He is a biologist. He is a Christian, and he is going to be on to discuss evangelical support for Donald Trump. It does appear like he's losing that support. Christianity Today published an editorial in which I believe it was actually one of the people who works at Christianity Today who basically said that we cannot endorse Trump. He is in violation of. Now, Christianity Today, I want to say, was founded by Jerry Falwell, but that may not be. It was a name guy, but I forget who Christianity Today was founded by. But he said that he is violating those principles of that
Billy
founder.
Graham.
Oh, Billy Graham. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you. Yep. Yep. Billy Graham. So he's violating the principles of Billy Graham and of the founding, and that he Christians cannot support him. That's staggering to come from Christianity Today, since it was in fact evangelicals that basically got him elected. So we'll see where that goes. One of the things is that because there is such tension, especially between Islam, and while they are not Arab, they are an Islamic country, which is another distinction that people sometimes have issues with. But sometimes Christians and Arabs haven't gotten along well in history.
Yeah, there's been some tension there, here and there. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that is going to be interesting. I think that that this particular moment, that happened, this attack, is definitely going to color our entire discussion with Cy.
Yes, I think it will, and so I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you guys will join us. I think that's going to be this becomes far more important. So I'm glad. I think he's going to be very timely. I think things are going to change. I think, unfortunately, many Christians say they're against war, but turn out very much for it, including preemptive. I have a bumper sticker I used to have on my car. Who would Jesus bomb? And the only ones who seem to have an answer to that is the Anglicans, which is kind of funny.
Did you actually see what how Trump has actually what he tweeted about this?
No, I have not.
So all he tweeted to signal what he had done was just a picture of an American flag.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And most recently, Iran never won a war but never lost a negotiation. 49 minutes ago. Is he trying to say that it's all like war is good? They'll lose if we go to war, but negotiating bad? That's what it sounds like he's saying. Negotiating with Iran bad, fighting them good.
What's the exact tweet again?
The exact tweet is this: Iran never won a war, but never lost a negotiation. Tweeted 50 minutes ago.
That makes sense. That's I know how to interpret that. That's what we in the industry call kofefe. That's the definition of kofefe right there.
Got it. His tweet essentially announcing that he was that he has attacked. Well, really, it was right after the news reported on the attack with the American flag. To give you an idea, has let's see, 467,000 likes.
Jesus. All right, so this is and this is still breaking news. And for those of you who have joined us, we really appreciate it. We like to try to really, give everyone what they need to try to understand the news and the history and what's going on. And I hope we've been successful with that, judging by the generous donations and super chats, which we appreciate. I think we have been. I think we're going to start to try to put a pin in this for now. I got to tell you, I love you guys. I love being on air with Ansgar. I love chatting with our audience, but I really hope I don't have to come back for this topic. Hope I don't see you guys again.
Almost guarantee you there's going to be an update at the very least. Yeah, I mean, so just to give you an idea of some of the big tweets that are going out right now, I just want you to get an idea of the culture. We've got like, love you, President Trump. Thank you for defending the United States.
I'm looking for where's my pen? I had a red pen here and
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for defending the United States.
Finish those and then yeah.
And then I'm so thankful you're president. God bless America. And then a lot of people tweeting at him his tweets to Obama.
All right, give me 1 second.
But yeah, I think that gives you an idea of the ground war of the culture. And Coesa, for 5-1, says, so do we get to see the thongs?
Yes, Ansgar is going to be on a thong. I'm not that brave. No, we're going to have Ansgar in a thong, and
It's gonna be
we will
leather
have.
and it has spikes.
I didn't need that imagery. I really didn't need that imagery. And what we're going to do too is we are going to issue a warning. We are not responsible for any damage done to monitors by this or seizures and stuff like that. We'll do the whole 9 yards. So yeah, I have reasonably, well understood, I think, by most people, beliefs on Christianity. That's and religion. I mean religion in general. I don't think that's either here nor there right now. But for people who are interested, I'm always on Twitter. I'm always willing to discuss it, and I even have a website for it. So. Yeah, I think thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for your support. If there is any other significant breaking news, which there may be, we will certainly go live and let you know. If you want to know when that happens, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and make sure you have notifications on so that you're notified when we go live. We also notify people on Twitter, but the best way to just know is to let YouTube notify you, and for that you need to be subscribed and you need to hit the bell. Thank you all for who have supported us. We will be doing a Patreon hangout. It was supposed to be Monday, but I think we moved it to what is it? Thursday. We've got some shows next week that will also be covering some of this, and hopefully we won't be needed back. But if we are, we will come back, and we will endeavor to
And
keep you as
yeah.
fully informed as possible. Yeah.
And for the people who just joined us, really quick recap. The United States launched a drone attack on a Iranian general, killing him in Baghdad, Baghdad International Airport. The Iranians have vowed vengeance, and Twitter has decided it's World War III. They're it is top trending on Twitter right now, by the way, World War III.
Oh, Jesus.
And yeah, people are being very hyperbolic. But it is a very serious
So show them this
situation.
show. If somebody's saying it's World War III, that's you now have a half-hour segment show that you are 45 minutes. You can say,
Yeah.
no, here's the explanation.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yes.
shill. I'm gonna shill.
And no, absolutely do that. And so that is the situation. And things are getting heated between Trump and Iran on Twitter because that's what he does. And I think that about sums it up, don't you think?
I think that covers it beautifully.
All right. So, keep tuned. We will keep you updated if anything interesting else happens. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you all.